I am live. I really wonder how this is actually going on because I've been programming it. Actually, Fiorella has been programming it, which is my social media managers or one of the managers. I don't know, but Fiorella has been programming the lives so that there is a thumbnail and description set up ahead of time. And I just want to know how is there any sort of like lead up or something that you guys are seeing back home that shows, hey, this live is due to start in a few minutes. I'm just curious as to like how this presents to the community and what happens. For those of you who are not already familiar with the format of my live videos, I guess it's better to start off with myself. My name's Carl. It's just ENTP Life. On this channel, I mostly talk about how I've used my business hacks to more or less provide myself a passive income so that I am able to live out my life's dreams, which include traveling the world and being able to get the most out of life as possible. So that's what we cover here. Now, the typical format is that every Sunday I put out a video that covers my topic of the week. Okay. And this week's video was how to buy a business and how to earn money passively by owning a business that you didn't build yourself, but that you acquired. And I want to be able to talk a little bit about that process, why I decided to do that video, and answer anybody's questions as to how, how this all works and ways for you to follow that if you saw it as a pathway for yourself. Views, what's up? How are you? Thank you. I think that means hi, great channel, if that's what you mean by that. Thumbs up for you. If you can, anybody who comes in, just please hit the like button, comment in the comment field, show some engagement. If you're able to share this video, Mauricio Zapata, what's up? How are you? If you're able to share this video with anybody, please do so. The more people who are here in the community, I think the better we get at this. Let me see what else I should do. Probably going to share this little blip to Instagram, just in case anybody is watching there. Hey, for everybody on IG, if you're not already joining us live on YouTube, we are now live. Make your way over to ENTP Life. We're talking about how to buy a business and if it's the right choice for you. Veronica, what's up? How are you? Everybody on IG. I'm just trying to get things situated. Welcome. Glad you're hearing me and everything's coming over well. Make sure you like, share, engage with this content because things get more interesting when there's more people in here, more questions, more ideas, more to talk about. Okay, so this week's video I talked about how to buy a business because I'm in the process now of acquiring more home healthcare agencies. Our company was an acquisition target, just a short story, one of the publicly traded home care companies. And then a private equity firm were both looking at us. And I realized at that time that maybe I was on the wrong side of the transaction, that perhaps I should be on the acquisition side because I saw that a lot of those that were on the buying side were typical M&A folks who were just looking at the business from kind of the standard M&A lens, it being a strategic add-on, it being a revenue capture, it being geography, it being whatever niche they wanted to kind of satisfy with our agency. And they didn't seem so innovative. It was just like cookie cutter stuff. And I was like, man, these guys are really missing some huge potential in this home health industry. And I was, trying to upsell what we're doing that's innovative and different from other agencies to try to add value to the sale. And then, like I said, I just realized that maybe I would be better off kind of building out my own platform. So I ended up partnering with a gentleman by the name of Pratik. He's with Infinitive Capital. I'm thinking about Xfinity, the cable company, but he's with Infinitive Capital. He has tons and tons of experience on the merger and acquisition side. I have the experience on home healthcare operator side. And it just made sense for us to partner naturally. So now we're building out a book. We're trying to clear at least 100 million in home healthcare rev. That's between my existing agencies and the add-ons that we do. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to get there probably within the next 24 months. So that's exciting to kind of be on this side of things. And if that first 24 months excites us and we continue to add on, then we'll probably add on another 100 million or $200 million in rev and figure out what we're going to do at that point, whether we tender that company for sale or try to go to public offering route, which will be a first for me. I've never done a lot of these things, but it just seems like my natural progression and probably the path that I'm going to be on. If it doesn't work out, then my retirement starts early and I become a full-time enjoyer of life and just kind of settle in on what I've done for myself. So, what's up, Chili? Watching from Oregon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nadine, welcome. So, the process of buying a business is going to be the same as buying a house or any other commercial asset. And when I put it in that way, it really simplifies kind of what I mean. Because no matter what asset you're buying, there's going to be a few standard things that have to happen in order to make that transaction happen. First, you have to know what you want, and that business that you're looking to acquire or that asset that you're looking to acquire has to fit that requirement, right? So you need to be clear with what you want. For us, our requirement is at least $1 million of free cash flow per year. The more free cash flow, the better, right? That's the minimum requirement. But we're also looking for companies that have strong management in place, interesting geography, interesting case mix, diverse payer sources, reduced risk. So we have our criteria for what fits our buying plan. Just like if you're buying a house, you're going to know I want 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, in-ground pool, gated community, townhouse, freestanding house, condominium. You're going to have this criteria for what makes a good home for you. If you're buying an investment property, you're going to be considering rental income potential, either existing income and potential income. How could you optimize for increased rent? How could you optimize for reduced expenses? These are the same things that you're going to do no matter what sort of asset class you're buying. You're going to say, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with, and this is the criteria that it needs to meet. Once you've isolated a business of that kind, then what happens next? Well, naturally, what happens next is that you need to go into some sort of review process to make sure that it makes sense, right? So let's go back to the house example, since a lot of people are at least familiar with that. You go to buy a house, what do? You show up to the house, you walk through the house, you look at it, you say you like it, you start negotiating on price based upon what you've seen so far, and then you and the seller agree, hey, this price works for both of us. What happens next? In buying a home, you go through your due diligence process, which is your investigation of whether or not that house is good for you. And there's going to be a few stages of that due diligence, right? There's going to be your physical inspections. There's going to be your value, your third-party evaluation of the value of that property, right? Which is your appraisal. There's going to be the legal review, which is going to be from your title officer or your title agent or your attorney. They're going to be reviewing the custody of ownership. Is there anything outstanding? Are there any violations, any claims, any lawsuits, any foreclosures, any sort of liens on the property? Same thing you're going to do for the business. You're going to examine it from a legal standpoint. You're going to examine it from a taxation standpoint. You're going to obviously review operations, review key personnel. That's the only difference. But that may happen in a multifamily property, right? Who's a property manager? Who's the super? What sort of problems do you have? Do you have any outstanding litigation? Are there any regulation changes that are going to affect this asset in the future? This is all part of your due diligence process. Except with the business, you're going to have a few more steps because you're looking at more detailed operations, policy and procedures, review of personnel files. Obviously, your property doesn't have personnel files. So you go further into that process. And you're going to usually consult attorneys, you're going to consult other outside accountants, you're going to consult other experts who are helping you to review this. You don't necessarily, as when you're buying a house, you're not the legal expert, you're not the title authority. So what happens? You count on those specialists to warranty and guarantee that what you're buying is good and safe for you, right? So it's the same exact process with a business. So you're going to have to find appropriate attorneys who are familiar with the space, accountants that are able to make sense of the books. Somebody better be operations driven. You're going to certainly need people who are specialists in human resources and nursing, if you're dealing with home health care, to review personnel records, patient records. And at some point, you are satisfied with what you've reviewed. And at the same time, you're working out the money side of the transaction, right? Most transactions are a combination of cash equity, right? Debt, which is in the form of traditional bank lending and traditional bank lending and commercial paper, as well as a seller's note or a seller's loan or something along those lines, or an earn out of some kind. Typical structure, okay? Like a house. A house has your down payment amount and it has its mortgage. A business is more or less the same way. And you could also apply the same logic to real estate. You could have an equity portion, 20% down, 60% mortgage, 20% seller's note. Or you could do a 20% seller's note, 80% mortgage, if the lender will accept that. Most real estate lenders don't accept that. They don't want the owner carrying any paper, things like that. That can happen or whatever. So you need to find the lender, in most cases, that are agreeable to the terms and conditions of your offer, right? Like I said, if you're dealing in real estate or you're dealing in any asset class purchase, they're virtually the same in logic and approach, and you can kind of, put your new thinking cap on and apply it to the new industry or the new asset that you're looking at, and a lot of the things will follow the same pattern. And I think that's, as an ENTP and as an intuitive thinker, I think most intuitives can kind of piece together that, right, and say, oh wow, this is like something that I know. That's how we think, intuitive thinkers. So if it's like something that you're able to automatically group everything that is like, and then learn and focus on what's not similar, and then you have the whole story, right? So it makes it a lot quicker to understand. So I always try to use analogies of familiar things to help people understand what it is that they're doing. So that's typically the process. Now, when buying a business, the numbers tend to be much larger and the terms a lot more not as friendly as real estate, right? Real estate, you could get 30-year debt. You could get 3.5% down if you're doing an FHA loan, right? You get these incredible terms, prime plus half a point, things like that exist in real estate. In the M&A private equity world, it's not so friendly. You might have 5-year terms, 10-year terms, maybe 15. You're going to be at like prime plus 4 at times, prime plus 7, depending on what sort of lender you're dealing with, how distressed the asset is. And think about that. If you're buying a distressed company, a company that's at risk of bankruptcy or something along those lines, you're going to get a better deal. It's like buying a foreclosure, right? But there's only some lenders that deal with distressed properties. And when they do, like hard money lenders, the interest rates are going to be prime plus 5, prime plus 7, right? To make it worth it, because there's inherently more risk. It's kind of the same when you're looking at businesses. Real safe, secure business, easy to fund, easy to understand. You're going to get better terms on that than something that's more complex, more difficult, more risk. So I started to get some questions, which is great. So let's kind of go into that. So Robert Campbell asked, and I get criticized by, did I ask somebody? No. He asked, are licenses transferable? For example, Department of Labor or Department of Health licenses in home care. That's a state by state, depends on the situation. Okay. So the answer to that is yes and no. In some professions, in some lines of work, licenses are transferable. Uh, Here's an example. In New York, for instance, the license is transferable, but for home health care, but it's 18 to 24 months average. For an official change of ownership, it has to go through this board review process. It takes a while. The new owners have to be of good moral standing, relevant experience in the space, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have MD practices where the acquiring entity must be physician owned, or else you can't own a physician practice as a non-physician, right? Or or if you're not a hospital system. So that's what I mean by in some places it's yes and in some places it's no. Some places are trying to eliminate licenses, so the only option is an asset purchase into an existing license agency. So you could buy the patients, you could buy the employees, so to speak, absorb them into an existing license company, but licenses are not transferable, right? Or you might be in a certificate of need scenario where even if you're acquiring an agency, a certificate of need may need to be proven out to allow it to happen, or reproven because that's a new policy. So in some cases, it's going to be very straightforward and simple. Change of ownership is easy and an application, and it's done. And then other states, other jurisdictions, depending on what sort of license you have, what sort of business it is, it's going to be different. Okay, so I can walk you through a deal that died, right? So there was one deal that I was looking at, though actually the deal that I showcased in Tampa, that deal died. That was a agency that was doing a little over, let me see if I can remember this correctly. They were doing over $1 million in rev and maybe had net cash flow of about 250 to 300,000 a year. They wanted like 1.2 million. After I reviewed the deal and saw that I would have to replace a critical employee that was also an owner, it brought the net cash flow down to about 200 and a quarter. So I offered 4 times earnings on that, which was 900 grand. They declined, and I wasn't going to come up another $300,000 to do it. Now that deal was going to be an SBA finance deal, which would have required me to put down between 20 and 30,000. 20 and 30% of the purchase price. But again, that company was small. For me, it was like territory expansion and going after the contracts that they had. So my thinking was, well, they already have an established patient base. They have some infrastructure. They're here in Florida. They have some of the insurance companies that I want to service in Florida that have closed panels. So it made sense from a geography standpoint, a little bit of infrastructure, and from a payer standpoint. And I'm also working on a deal with another private equity-backed pharmaceutical company to do infusion medicine or infusion therapy or infusion treatments. So, and they also own a practice in Tampa. So there was that geography alignment and the need for a home care agency in that place. So that particular deal would have about a 5-year financing with like a 1.2 to 1.3 debt service ratio, meaning that the cash flow from the business had to be able to exceed and support the monthly debt on that property by on that asset by 20% to 30%, and still have enough cash flow for it to be interesting to me as the buyer, right? Because what the banks are looking for is, hey, after you purchase this deal with 80% borrowed money, and you pay this debt over the course of the life of this loan, how much money is going to be left there? How much wiggle room are you going to have if there's a downturn in economics? Are you going to have enough money to grow the business? Are you going to have enough money to pay for yourself so it's still interesting to you? Or is it just a cash out event for the sellers and we're left holding the bag and maybe not going to be able to collect on this business? So, it's kind of hard for me to walk you through something because when I don't know what specifically you're asking for. But I hope that potentially answered part of your question. Watching from England, what's up? Robert Campbell, is the acquisition process done the same as a merger? Yeah. So the only difference between a merger is that in a merger, you're literally either absorbing a company into a larger parent company where it's literally being managed under the same entity, or it could be a consolidation where you have a holding co or a holding company and you're bringing those companies under one parent company for ownership. That company can stand alone and operate independently, and what's being fused is the financials up to the holding co, or they're being absorbed into an existing entity and consolidating down. So let's just say you had 1,000 patients in one place, 2,000 patients in another, same state. You have duplication of CFO, duplication of certain managers that are unnecessary. You strip back the management, mash them together, they become one new entity. Mergers happen in both of those ways. If you just acquire a business without having any existing company, then it's not necessarily a merger, it's just an acquisition, right? There's nothing that's being fused. You're just buying one company. So, but the process is more or less the same. How you optimize, what is your strategy, how do you extract value from that acquisition may be different depending on what you're looking to do. In a merger, you're usually merging for like competitive edge, competitive pricing. You'll merge for geography. You'll merge sometimes for technology. You'll merge for subsectors that one of the companies has already developed a tranche in, and you're thinking about developing that vertical within your business. And obviously, they have a proven positive system. So companies merge for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's IP, intellectual property. For us, our goal is to acquire well-run companies with good management in place, especially when we're entering new geography. And we're looking for payer diversity, and we're looking for some level of significant market penetration for that particular agency. Also looking for kind of friendly state policy and kind of financial movement. Okay, next question. This is good. It's awesome, man. I didn't think people would be that interested in buying a business. Views. Let's see what's yours. Hello. Okay, there we go. Is it best to buy real estate businesses as their own / set up each property as their own entities and hold them within an overall vehicle when thinking about getting business / investment finance? Structure of a deal is kind of something that happens, which is either strategic for you or at the request of capital, right? So you can have a syndication that you raise money to do one standalone deal for one per asset in one entity. And that deal stands alone, and that's your preferred structure and the preferred structure of the investors. And then you could have another situation where you have a holding co structure where the investment takes place in this parent fund, and that parent fund acquires multiple assets. However, they decide to structure all those multiple assets to be held by their own holding entity, and that holding entity is owned by the parent company. So it's with structure, there isn't one size fits all, but more or less common practices, right? So it's either going to be holding co, and all the assets are held by their holding co. There might be one independent sponsor or entity that is kind of the management entity that is managing the pool of limited partners. This structure is going to always be along those lines and can change, and it could be direct, exchange of shares for capital in one entity, and that's it. So oftentimes the structure tends to be at the discretion of who has the power in the transaction. If you're going to be using a lot of private equity, a lot of private investors, maybe the lead investor might set the tone on what the structure needs to be for them to play, because that's what they like, that's what their attorneys advise. And hey, if you want the money, you got to bend over and take it. Or you could not bend over and try to find another investor. So, I think it's more important. The better way of thinking about it is it's more important to be able to identify, isolate, and prove a good deal, and then worry about structure later. Have structure in mind, but worry about it later, because a good deal is going to give you the most, the best positioning for getting the best terms that you possibly could get, right? A deal that has everybody salivating leaves you in a position to, to kind of get them to maybe push on some of their standards, because they know the deal is so sweet that it's asinine for them to miss it because they're being too rigid. But it all depends on the investors, because some of them are super rigid and will not budge, or their mandate in their offering documents from where they raised money, limits them from being too flexible. So structure gets ironed out, after the deal has been identified and sorted out, typically. Because let's just say you invested money in a structure that no investor wants to participate in, right? Whether it's your offering documents, you're setting up your initial LLC, your initial shareholders and operating agreement. Yeah, you spent $50,000 doing that. And then you find a lead investor that really loves the deal and says, this is not going to get through our due diligence process. Scrap that. Now you just threw $50K into the wind. But if you found a really good deal, you vetted that deal, and then they were interested, now you can talk about structure. Hey, I propose this. This is my idea. This is their idea. This is the mandate. This is not the mandate. And then you wiggle around from there, because you could spend money in structure and all this other stuff and never, ever find a deal. And then you quit, and then you just have a bunch of legal documents. You don't want that. When you purchase a business, does the purchase include assets such as real estate, inventory, cars, etc.? All negotiable. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it's the business and the employees. Sometimes it's the business and the assets. Are the assets instrumental to the business operations? If so, they should be priced in, or they should be valued in a certain way and added on, or all of that is up to what you decide. It's like selling a house. Do you sell a house with the furniture or not? If they really want the furniture, it's staged. Okay, this is how much the furniture is going to cost. Do you still want it? Yes or no? Yeah, I still want it. Perfect. Sold. I'm selling a house now that is staged, and I don't even want the furniture. I'm almost giving it away for free, because I don't want to have to pay the movers to come and move it, put it in storage, and the storage is going to cost me money. I'd rather just say, here, have it, enjoy. You like the way it looks. What you don't like, sell it on your own, right? It could be the same for the business. The business may have a bunch of vehicles, and they're like, hey, I just want out. The market value on the vehicles is 500,000. We'll just factor it in at 300,000. I don't care. It's all up to what you negotiate and what the sentiment is and how crucial those assets are to the business. Like, for example, let's just say it's inventory, right? And it's a supermarket. The asset of the supermarket is the food. So you can't say, hey, I'm going to buy this supermarket, but I don't want to buy any of the groceries that you have in here. You could keep all the groceries, or you could keep all the products. I'm buying a whole new swath of products. Then what did you buy? A location. That's about it. So it kind of has to make sense for the deal. Robert, does purchasing a business with a loan automatically decrease the profit margin? Yes. Of course. And of course it decreases the profit margin, right? Like, again, let's think about it in a familiar way. Real estate. Property rents for $5,000 a month. If you didn't have a mortgage, your profit margin would be, hypothetically, $5,000 a month, not including, taxes, insurance, that kind of thing. You'd make $5,000 a month. If you have a mortgage and that mortgage is $4,000, your margin now is $1,000 a month. Now, what if it cost you $120,000 to buy that same asset and it makes $1,000 a month? Your cash on cash return on investment is 10%. Now, what if you paid $500,000? No. What if you paid $600,000 for that same asset and it was making $5,000 a month? Yeah, and it was making $5,000 a month, 12 months, that's $60,000. You're still making 10%. You can even have a scenario where you put $120,000 down and it's making you $1,500 a month. So now you're making $18,000 a year on 120 spend, or whatever number I use, $100,000 spend. Now you're making 15 to 18% cash on cash versus the 10% that if it was an all cash deal, right? So the profit margin off of what was the net operating income or the operating income for that entity will naturally be decreased because there's going to be a percentage of that paying off debt. So the more leverage you use, the more debt you use, the more you're going to cut into the profit margin of that business. But you need to decide how much that's going to be and what's worth it to you. So let's just say you bought a business that had free cash flow of $5 million a year, but $3 million went to debt service. You're still netting out $2 million. Is that bad, right? Maybe it costs you $4 million to do the deal, cash, and it's netting $2 million for the group. Now it's netting $2 million. You paid $4 million cash. The other percent. Let's just say it was a $20 million deal, right? So you paid $4 million in cash, and it's $3 million a year debt service over 6 years. Let's just kind of keep it clean. So 6 years, $3 million. That's $18 million. Ticket price was $20 million. Original debt was $16 million. You paid back 18. You paid $2 million in interest. So for the first 6 years of owning that business, you made $2 million every single year for 6 years. So that's $12 million on a $4 million investment. And from years 6 through however many more years you run that business, what ends up happening? You made your $12 million on the first 6 years. So you're already up 300%. You got 3x on your initial equity investment. And after year 6, you're getting 100%, well, 120% year over year from your first year investment. Then it starts to get monstrous. So you pick and choose your poison. That's why when you're buying a business, the same reason that deal didn't quite make sense other than for strategic territory and licensing, the money was small, right? $2 million a year is good money. $100,000 a year for some people may be good, but for the effort, it's not worth it. So usually the better deals have a higher net cash flow. It makes more sense for everybody. It's delicious to the bank who's cutting a $14 million check, right, with $3 million of interest over 5 years or whatever amount of years. They're comfortable with that. They're happy with that. And there's enough left for the sponsors and the people who put the deal together, the buyers and the private equity group. There's enough left that people are happy with the net proceeds from that. Not to mention they could turn over and grow the business, flip the business, cash out some more. It just makes more sense the bigger the numbers are. Everybody eats more. Everybody's more satisfied with the transaction. When the numbers are small, you're buying a business that does 100,000, and that business does 100,000 with an owner operator. What happens when that owner operator sells and you have to hire a good manager? There's going to be nothing left. That 100,000 that was a net profit is gone. Especially if they weren't paying themselves a salary. And if they were, there might be some add backs for that, but bigger numbers, better deal. Okay, my wife is a hospitalist MD. We have been thinking about buying something in the medical field. We're thinking in a compound pharmacy, nursing home, or something in the medical field. I think that's a good idea. Does she have experience with compound pharmacies, you or her? Do they have experience in owning and running a skilled nursing facility? I think it makes more sense to buy into something that she understands or you guys understand relative to your expertise, right? Or else you're going to be going through this learning curve where you're not going to even be able to identify quite well, is it a good buy or bad buy, where the opportunity is. We looked at a retail pharmacy and I was like, I don't know anything about retail pharmacies. You don't know anything about retail pharmacies. My partner, I was like, there's going to be such a learning curve here. It's not worth it to us. And they were doing pretty good numbers, but it was like, we can make the deal happen, but now we're buying something that we don't even know how to manage, really how to extract value from it. Meanwhile, I could go and walk into another home care agency and then 10 minutes of the conversation, identify if it's a winner or a loser and where they're leaving a bunch of meat on the potatoes or meat on the bones, so to speak, for that particular deal. So your wife's a hospitalist. I don't know what you are as far as profession, but I would think it might make more sense to purchase like a practice of hospitalists with both MD hospitalists and nurse practitioners that are servicing, a hospital system, but may not have a private practice, and maybe try to grow out a group that can do more than just what they've been doing and extract some value from there. But, I don't know. What I think matters the most is your particular skill set and knowledge base. Let's see what this next question is. We don't know where to start, but I would like to meet with you whenever you are available. I live in Miami as well, and I will like to invite you for lunch to discuss further. Well, here comes the sale. I've been doing consultations. You can book a consultation with me. It's probably going to be cheaper than lunch. So get on the calendar, get on the board. We could have a conversation about what it is that you want to do. It's not that I would love to eat your food, but it might be more efficient for me timing wise to just have a Zoom call than to drive, meet somewhere, you know, spend some time at lunch. It might be even longer than that. So I'd rather just do the consultation, get to know you, get to kind of pick each other's brains, and then see where it goes from there. That might be the better format. So if you go to my Instagram or maybe in the comment section or description, I might have a link to booking. I book up pretty quickly now, it seems. I don't do many sessions a week. That's not where, it's really not where I make money at all. Honestly, I guess I make money out of other things that may get facilitated out of that call, but that would be the best bet. Okay. My ambition is to run my own care home for people with disabilities. Doing a lot of research because I don't know where to start this, and also doing a course in leadership and management skills. I think that's a good way to start, is acknowledging what you don't know, because then you can clearly say what you need to know, and you're also taking coursework to help enrich you. So I think you're going in the right direction. One of the best things for you to do is potentially work in a home, try to work with the administrator of that home, learn the business from them and working for them. I think that might be a good starting point. If a bank offers you 80% at a fixed rate, can you go to another bank for the other 20%? Yes, which would be called like a bridge loan of kinds, or mezz financing or secondary financing. The only thing is, if one bank offers you 80%, their stipulations may be that you personally must have 20% equity. Because who wants to lend you 100% of the deal so that you could just decide, yeah, I don't think I like this business, and default? What loss is there for you to wake up one morning and say, I don't want to do this anymore? A credit hit? Who cares? A lien? Who cares? You know, they want to know that your blood, sweat, and tears, your money is also invested alongside them. 100% financing, they're not trying to hear that. You know, what would you lend on those terms? Would you be the 20% loan for somebody? Like, honestly, Carl comes up to you and says, hey man, I got this great deal. It's so great, I want you to be my 20% down, and I'm going to put zero money down, and I'm going to get the other 80% from this lender, right? In an ideal world, you can squeeze that deal and make it happen, right? For you, it's ideal. For the person who's coming in for the 20%, they're going to say, well, I'm the only one, and the bank's the only one who's at risk of losing anything. The only thing that you're going to lose is your reputation and your credibility. I don't think that's a fair split. I want to see you have skin in the game, money in this transaction. So chances are, like, very low probability that that's going to be how you finance the deal. You're going to have some cash in there. You know, SBA is looking at 20, 30%, and they're friendly. Your SBICs maybe looking at 40, 60. Or they might come with some equity themselves plus their loan facility. They're still going to want you to come in for 20 to 30, and they're going to bang you out for the money that they're coming in. They're going to take a pretty nice equity position in this company, and they're going to be holding debt that's expensive. So you got to pick your poison, man. I think the more cash you come to the table with, the better terms you're going to be able to negotiate for yourself, and the better position that ultimately you're going to be in. But you do want to use leverage to some extent, because you just increase your buying power, and the long-term outcome is pretty good for you, especially if there's enough capital in the company to service debt, pay yourself a little bit of money, and the real value add is that there's enough cash in that business, cash flow, free cash flow, to invest and grow the business or to save up and buy more businesses, right? So it should the theory shouldn't be I'm just going to buy this business and sit and collect. That's one option, but that business is going to be worth so much more if you invest more and more into its growth. Let's just say you bought it for $5 million, you doubled, the market value, you doubled the profit over 3 years' time. You paid down some of the debt. Your company is now worth 2 times more, right? So even if you had $1 million in, you paid down, and let's just say it was $1 million in, you bought the deal for $5 million. You paid off half the loan and you doubled the business, right? You went from $1 million in free cash flow to $2 million in free cash flow, right? Because of your reinvestment in the business. That business is now worth $10 million, right? You paid $1 million for it. It's now worth $10 million. And since you paid down half of that original loan, when you sell this thing, you're going to cash out $7.5 million, 2.5 to pay off the balance of your debt, 7.5 because that was your sales price. You just turned 1 million into 7.5 million while paying yourself a salary to manage this growth. So that's why it's really important for you to understand the business and know what your strategy is from the get-go. Because if you're just trying to buy the business and you're not clear that you could drive value, you could drive revenue, you could drive growth. If you're not clear on that, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen to you? You're going to just kind of stay level. And if you do, that's like the worst case scenario in your typical private equity deal. You bought a business that was doing $1 million a year for $5 million. You held it for 4 years, 3 years. You paid down the majority of the debt. 1 million in. You sell it for the same 5 million because you never grew it out. Now you get 3 million out. You got to double, you got to triple on your money. Okay, that's fine, right? Nothing changed, whatever. But you really want that 4x, 5x more growth, significant growth, so that your seed investment of $1 million at some point is worth the 7.5 or it's worth 15 million because you took that business to another level that the original owners just were incapable of doing. Views. Wow, thank you at ENTP Life. I really understood what you mean. The best practices follow along policy and management philosophy or core centrist / liability. Yeah, I think I had it a little backwards. I think most people are not even thinking about it, right? And if they're thinking about it and they think about it a little bit backwards, at least they're thinking about it, right? Most people aren't thinking of buying a business as a pathway to changing their circumstances or moving into somewhere else. And when they do think about buying a business, they end up buying these lifestyle businesses, right? That are like laundromat, restaurant, car wash, tangible, familiar businesses. And that might be cool and all, but usually when you buy one of those businesses, you're buying yourself a job, right? You're buying yourself self-employment, and you didn't have to build it from scratch, right? So you got a little further. You got away from working a 9 to 5 to working a 9 to 9 for yourself, right? That's not so much fun. And if you look at really buying kind of, like middle market businesses as kind of where you go, you're going to need to have relevant experience and relevant expertise to even make it work. So I think these conversations are good to have because sometimes they open a door in your mind that otherwise wouldn't be opened, And when you open that door in your mind that otherwise wouldn't be opened, magic starts to happen, right? That's the conversation that I was having with my partner yesterday. We were talking about race dynamics in New York City and why the stop and frisk policy was so detrimental to the African American community and the Latino community in New York City, right? We're both New York guys, so we're having this conversation. And he spent a lot of time in education. So what we concluded in our conversation is that the difference between people doing well and not doing well is their level of exposure to ideas and concepts. Without having that exposure to ideas and concepts, you're just closed. You don't know what you don't know. And it's hard to spontaneously dream up things if you don't know. You have to have some sort of base, observation, good listening skill. But if none of these things are part of the conversation in your household, in your community, amongst your friends, amongst your colleagues, amongst your classmates, amongst other people's parents, the idea of buying a mid-market business for $5 million using, SBA financing, private equity, these things aren't going to just spontaneously arrive in your mind and then you're going to somehow do it. That's just not going to happen. So these conversations are important and are critical for emerging entrepreneurs or people who are just looking for something else. And ENTP Life, I know we mostly talk about real estate, business, home health care, travel, blah, 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 all over the place. But money conversations are good conversations to have because money is an enabler of bringing ideas into reality. And that's kind of what I really like about the channel. So, for those of you who may have come for aviation and we're now talking about business, you might be finding your pathway to aircraft ownership. Or, those of you who are really interested in finance and business that are now looking for deeper meaning in life may find value in aviation and saying, hey, man, I've always had this bug to fly planes and, I got this money sitting around. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And then this video on aircraft opens your mind to possibilities and other things. And I think that's really what I enjoy most here. I'm going to answer these next few questions and then I'm getting out of here because I got to prepare for a call regarding our deals that we're looking at. Robert, who is responsible for any business credit, balance, loans, or previous debt in general of the business, the owner or the new buyer? Like a real estate transaction, if there is existing debt, you typically, if you're taking on new debt, they're going to want all that debt, existing debt, paid off, and that's going to be part of the settlement process of that transaction. So let's just say you buy a house. That's why I go back to houses. You buy a house, that seller has an existing mortgage. What happens? That mortgage must be paid. What mortgage is paid? The oil and the freaking oil tank gets paid. All vendors and contractors that are due money gets paid. Everybody gets paid before the seller gets paid. Because the bank does not want anybody making a claim to that property other than them. They want to protect their money. So if you want this transaction to happen, all this got to be paid, and that's part of the settlement process. Same thing with a business asset. If you came in as a cash buyer and you're like, oh yeah, no worries, I'll still continue to service that debt that you have. You could do that, but I'm pretty sure your sale price is going to reflect it. But if you're dealing with bank money, they're not going to want any secondary debt. They're going to want all that cleared. Or if there is a secondary debt, they're going to want it subordinated to them, where that's second. I liquidate first. You may be, out of luck if this business were to default and we were to kind of go through a bankruptcy liquidation. You may be screwed. And that bank in the second position may say, yeah, I'll take that deal. for 12%, 15% annual interest. It looks like it'll survive, the 5 years that I'm going to recoup most of my money. So that's what happens. Are you allowed to use 203K rehab loan more than once? Yes. You're able to do so if you meet the criteria of a new buyer. So that means that you haven't owned a house for a certain amount of time, or you moved more than 100 miles from the first home. So let's just say you bought a home in New York, you did an FHA 203K loan on there, you moved to Atlanta, you did one over there, you moved to Texas, you did one there, and then you moved to LA, you've been moving more than 100 miles each time. That's one of the requalifying factors. India aware, how do you manage during the recent staffing shortages? You got to use staffing agencies. You have to increase your staff's production quotas, or you just can't take on new business, or all of the above. So, there's nothing that you can do other than try to recruit more, try to recruit in other territories, dangle higher pay rates. Because look at something that was happening with the LPNs. The LPNs were doing, sorry about all the flares. The LPNs were doing a lot of COVID vaccinations. They didn't want to do home care. They didn't want to work in nursing facilities because it was easier to just be outside, hanging out, needle stick to the arm, observe you for 15 minutes, see you later, and they were getting paid $40, $50, $60 an hour, 1.5 to 3 times their normal pay. Why are they going to want to work for a home care agency? Why are they going to want to work in a skilled nursing facility? But now that a lot of people have been vaccinated, a lot of those contracts are drying up, they're back in the workforce. So, that's what's happening there. Never. India, when are you gonna upgrade the Piper Cherokee to a proper glass cockpit G1000? Let me tell you, if I do that G1000 upgrade, right? The G1000 is probably gonna cost. What is the G1000 installed running for these days? 40 grand? Let me see. Upgrade cost. I'm gonna see this right now. Okay, the G1000 upgrade is available for $28,995. I paid $35,000 for my plane. It's a 1964 Piper Cherokee. Then I'm gonna pay $28,000 in a glass cockpit, right? With my old wiring, my dusty interior, my bad paint job. Now I'm gonna say, oh man, I gotta redo the interior. I gotta redo the paint. Now I'm in 70 grand, right? Oh, I gotta add an autopilot because I want one. Okay, I'm in 85,000, right? What am I gonna sell that plane for? Maybe I could get 100,000 for it fully loaded with a Jeep, maybe 125. So I'm gonna be at even. Or I could turn around and take 20% of that and find the same airplane and buy that. Or I could take, the same $70,000, $80,000 that I'd be putting into paint, glass panel, autopilot, new interior, and go find a nice Cirrus SR22, put down $80,000 on a $250,000 plane, and pretty much get a glass cockpit, get the speed, get a new modern interior, a more modern airframe, same sort of time on an engine maybe. So it's sometimes you got to kind of pick your battle. Some people do it. Some people fall in love with the airframe so much that they just keep pouring money into it. That's not me. I want a faster, more capable plane, and I'd rather put the money towards purchasing that. And I think I'm going to do that next year, and it's most likely going to be a Piper Malibu. So that's the logic that I have there. Either 2022 or 2023. I'll get a Malibu, and it most likely won't be a G1000 unless I get a good price where it makes sense that I do the upgrade, where it's like, hey, you know what? I have some buffer room here. But I learned on a 6-pack, I'm comfortable with it. You know, if I look at a G1000, I get a little intimidated because I don't know what anything is. See, it seems like so many buttons. Greetings, everyone. Like and share. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Like and share. Okay. How do you find the right staff, cleaners, maintenance to manage the Airbnb in Italy? How can you trust personnel across continents to keep your standards for the property? Well, there's a few ways that you could do that. So right now I'm screening people to manage my Airbnb, and they will ultimately be responsible. So that'll take a cut out of my ultimate profit margin, but I'm definitely not going to be flying back and forth to satisfy that need. So the management cost is going to be cheaper than that. You might be able to push up your price, 5-10% to maybe help offset that management cost. And then you can handle it through video. You can kind of get a sense of how things are through reviews. You can consult with your managers. You can consult directly with your cleaners, and use the tools that you have at your disposal to get the best possible outcome. And just because you're there and you're physically, the idea would be to have a manager in place and a cleaning crew in place that cares more about the outcome than you. For instance, my cleaner here in Fort Lauderdale, I love her. She goes above and beyond what is necessary to get the job done. She has her own backup, and she is always looking at how can she improve the experience of the guest. She's reading the comments. She's on it, and I love her for it. She's more on it than me for myself. I wouldn't care as much as she cares. So having someone like that who's your cleaning crew, who's going to care more about the job than you do, is probably your best bet. That's my best advice, and you can keep looking for that person. What's up? What's up? What's up? About to get out of here. Thanks for the response. Dream now would be DA62 for the operating costs. The upfront costs are going to cost you too. I kind of like used aircraft because you don't get hit up as much with the depreciation, and 10 years, 15 years removed, a lot can kind of change avionics wise, but you don't see like a huge change in performance typically, right? So those aircraft, they'll design little enhancements to get maybe a little more efficiency. I don't know, minor changes that don't necessarily translate to a significant enough change to warrant the $600,000 price difference. At least for me. Cool. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time. I'm glad that you're booking a session. Just to close out, just remember, salesman's crap. Somebody has to say it. This is a tip for anybody who's looking to be a business owner. Most business owners don't like sales. It's a necessary evil to grow your business. The only person that's going to talk about your business is you. All right? So my closing commercial, if you're interested in starting a healthcare staffing company, not a home healthcare agency, because I don't really consult in that lane too much. I don't set them up. I don't get them ready. I might coach people, but I don't set up home care agencies. Too much work. You're looking to start a healthcare staffing company, which can be equally lucrative and more lucrative than home healthcare. I have a course out, Passive Workforce. It's only $97 a month. If you get the basic If you want the premium, which includes documentation, mentoring, access to me, more information, more richness, do that. There's another person out there who is selling a course for $10,000 a month. I have had multiple consultations with that person's students. Major gap in teachings and practices, surprisingly. And I keep getting referrals from people from that class because they recognize that I'm providing more value for far less money. So if you're interested, check out my website, entplife.com. I'll post it here. You could learn how to start a staffing company. Like I said, you have a super cheap option, which is $97 a month. You could learn what you need to learn. You have a more expensive option, which is $2,000 one time. If that's the better route for you, I think that's the better package, to be quite honest, because it just gives you more access, more information. That's the one. I haven't started to do a turnkey model yet, but based on the demand and the interest and what I see other people are charging for just information, I might just undercut that person and do a turnkey package for the same price as her basic course. That would be like the real gut punch. So I'm thinking about doing that. So check that out. If you're interested in investing in 1 to 4 family real estate, I have my other course, Killing the American Dream, shows you how I approach investing in 1 to 4 family real estate, mostly buy and hold strategy, but fix and flip for the most part. Learn both models, why I like one versus the other. I will also buy, fix, renovate, refinance, Airbnb properties as well. So I kind of go over that. So those sort of things are covered. And in any of my weekly videos, check it out. I'm always sharing new information, different ideas, businesses that I'm trying. You know, I took my hand at this Turo thing. Maybe my third rental, crashed my car, $25,000 worth of damage. That sucked, but that's something that I experienced. I'll be highlighting that experience on the channel to talk about how that went. So I like to kind of give you whatever knowledge or whatever information I have. Here you have Sean, the Savvy Business Chick. She is a home health care consultant. She helps the startups. She helps coach existing home care agencies. She herself owned and operated a home care agency, which she got a nice exit on. She built a business from scratch, sold it for a nice multiple. Now she's teaching others how to do it. Really nice lady, stand-up person. I like her a lot. I think she's pretty cool. Easy to talk to, easy to work with, supportive. So if you are thinking about home health care, I don't consult in that lane. That's her lane. You know, check her out, Savvy Business Chick on YouTube and Instagram. Reach out to her. She gets my 2 thumbs up. Yeah, man. That's why I said I just got it back. And then it's back in the shop because it's freaking leaking antifreeze all over the place. So it is what it is. You know what I mean? I bought the car for Turo. I enjoy it when I want, but it's been in the shop for 3 months. I don't know what multiple she got. You could ask her, but I would guess it was more in the 4 to 5 range. I don't see why she would have taken 2 to 3. Unless you're talking about multiples on revenue, which varies based on whether or not you're skilled, non-skilled, and what the margins are. But if you're talking about multiple on earnings, home health, you know, below 100 million, you're looking at between 4 and 5. You start getting closer to 100 million, you're looking at 7 to 10x multiples. So I don't know what size she was. I never went into counting her pockets, but if she wants to answer you, she can. All right, guys, take care. Have a good night. Be well, and I'll see you next one. Thanks for joining me here at ENTP Life. Like, share, subscribe. Later.